everyone, welcome to our first Baking with Baerg episode. This week we are going to be baking cheeseburger pizza. So while you are at home on break, learning how to cook things would be a great thing to do. And we are going to help you do that by teaching you how to make some things from scratch. So we are going to be making cheeseburger pizza. First of all, because it's delicious. Second of all, because most of you have these things in your fridge. It doesn't actually use regular pizza sauce, so if you don't have that in your house, then you won't have to go out and get it from the grocery store. For my pizza crust, I like to use a recipe from this cookbook, Mennonite Girls Can Cook. Unless you're Canadian, you've probably never heard of it before, but we are going to start with the pizza crust. So these are some of the ingredients that you are going to need. You're going to need some flour. I just use all-purpose baking flour. You are going to need some white sugar. You are going to need salt, instant yeast, ours is just in a container here, some oil, some warm water, and then some cornmeal. There. Those are the things that you are going to need. For those of you who are new to the baking world, we're just going to give you a quick introduction of some of the measuring cups that we will be using. So look around your house. You probably have some sort of measuring cups like this. They say half cup, yeah, you can't see them, half cup, all the cups, all the way up to 1 cup. These are dry measuring cups, so they are used for your dry ingredients like sugar and flour. And then look around for one of these. It is used for the fluid ingredients, so things like water, oil, liquid measuring cup. So make sure you use those separate ones. This is for dry ingredients, this is for liquid ingredients. Then you will need teaspoons and tablespoons. If you don't know the difference, if it doesn't say the whole thing, if it says TSP, that is a teaspoon, and a tablespoon, it'll say TBS. Usually teaspoons are in small letters and tablespoons are in capital letters. So go ahead and look for your measuring spoons and decipher those. And the last thing we're going to be using is our piece of equipment here. Let me just move you over. We are going to be using a KitchenAid mixer with this dough hook. So if you don't have a mixer with a dough hook, that's okay. You can just knead it with your hands. But using a mixer with a dough hook just makes it a lot easier. So with that, we are going to get started. You're going to want to make sure that you are washing your hands throughout this process because remember, you are touching food that other people or yourself are eating. So make sure that you wash your hands regularly. All right, one more quick thing before we get started. Since we are making our crust from scratch, it needs to have time to rise. So you're going to want to make sure that you make your pizza before you're going to eat it with enough time for it to sit and rise. Then you're going to punch it down and spread it out. So probably leave at least half an hour in order for your crust to finish after you're done mixing it. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add the flour. We are going to make a double batch. So originally the recipe called for 3 cups of flour, so we're going to do 6 cups of flour. For those of you who have made bread before, you know that the flour is kind of a suggestion, so you want to make sure that the dough at the end is just not too sticky to the touch, but you don't want to put too much flour in, otherwise it will make it really hard. So we have to have a happy in between. Now, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is the flour. You are going to need your 1 cup and your flour. So when you measure flour, a lot of recipes called for sifted flour. In this case, we're just going to use flour out of the bag. However, there's a couple of things you don't want to do. Number 1, you don't want to just scoop your flour because that's not going to give you the right amount of flour. What you want to do is just take a spoonful and then gently place it in. So the idea is that you are incorporating air into your flour as you are putting it in. And then once you get to an overflowing point, you don't want to pack it down, you just scrape off the top and put it into your mixing bowl. All right, that was our 6 cups of flour. We're gonna leave the flour out because we're probably gonna need it later. Okay, the next thing is a teaspoon of sugar. So, we got a teaspoon of sugar. Definitely need 2 teaspoons of sugar. Teaspoon of salt. All right, we got a teaspoon of salt. Now you are going to need a tablespoon of instant yeast. Okay, at this point we are going to gently mix all that together. Got our oil. Gonna need 1. And then some warm water. Now your warm water is used to activate the yeast, so you want it to be warm but not hot, otherwise it'll kill the yeast. So keep that in mind as you get your water. All right, the next thing we are going to do is mix up in our KitchenAid mixer until it is of dough consistency. I will put the recipe and the instructions in the description below and on the website, so feel free to refer to those. But I'll show you what the finished product looks like here. All right, so at this point, you will have a dough started. And as you can see, this is pretty, actually it's not too bad, but it's pretty sticky to the touch. So I'm going to add about 1/2 cup more flour and mix that in. And then this is, once it gets to the right consistency, then you will set this to raise. All right, I didn't actually add a whole 1/2 cup, I added about 1/4 cup, but I like the consistency it's at now. Remember that when you work with dough, you want to coat your fingers in flour, otherwise a lot of times it sticks to your hands. And there we have our dough. Now we are going to cover that with a towel and set it off to the side so that it can grow to double in size. All right, we're going to let that raise till it is about double in bulk. You can see I have it sitting over here on the counter, but for those of you who want it to rise quicker, putting it in a warm location or in a slightly warmed oven will make it rise a lot faster. So while that is going, we are going to prepare the rest of the things for the cheeseburger pizza. At this point, depending on what kind of pizza you're going to make, you can be adventurous. Go ahead and look in your refrigerator, see what you have in there. I know that we have some turkey and some barbecue sauce as well, so I'm going to make a turkey barbecue and, I don't know, maybe some green peppers, throw some of that on it. So just look in your refrigerator or your cupboard, see what you have. If you have pepperonis and pizza sauce, awesome. You can make a pepperoni pizza. But this is the part where you really get to choose your adventure and make whatever kind of pizza you like. All right, for cheeseburger pizza, we are going to need a couple of main ingredients. You're going to need mustard and ketchup. going to need pickles, dill pickles, because they're delicious. You are going to need some mozzarella cheese and some cheddar cheese, and then you are going to need some ground beef. So our freezer is full of ground beef. If you don't have ground beef, you can use something else, ground deer, chicken, turkey, but we like ground beef. So you're going to need to thaw your ground beef if it's frozen, and brown your ground beef. Do not put raw ground beef on your cheeseburger pizza. You want to make sure it is fully cooked before it goes on there. So I'm going to show you the process of how to do that. The first thing you're going to need to prepare your ground beef is a pound of thawed ground beef. I'm just using a pound because we are only using this on one pizza, so that's going to be plenty. If you plan on using this on a bunch more pizzas, then you're probably going to need more. So I have that. You're going to need a stove of some sort, and then you are going to need a pan in order to brown your meat. So the first thing you're going to do is put your thawed ground beef into your pan. And then you can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to turn on our element. Now we want little chunks of ground beef, so we are going to chop it. But you can see how it's red in color, so the way you know ground beef is cooked is it will be brown. There will be no pink in the middle. It will be totally brown all the way through each of the chunks. While we're waiting for that to warm up, let's just take a look at our dough here. You can see it's already raised a bunch since we've had it sitting there. Okay, that is the finished effect that we are looking for, nice ground beef. If you have extra fat, you might need to drain the fat off. Otherwise, we're just going to put that to the side and let it cool a little bit until we are ready to make our pizza. Alright, so now that you have your ground beef browned, you're going to prepare your other ingredients for your cheeseburger pizza. Now, we are going to take a look at our dough. It's been about 10 minutes-ish since we ground our ground beef. And here's what our dough looks like. As you can see, it is very, very fluffy, so it is pretty much ready to go. You want to be really careful with dough as it is rising, because if you have any bumps or loud noises, maybe not loud noises, but it can actually deflate the dough before it's ready, and we don't want that to happen. So when you move around the pan, you're going to want to be really careful. The other thing I forgot to mention before is that when you are cooking with especially raw meats, you want to make sure that the utensils that you use for raw meat does not get used for any other ingredients, especially your dry ingredients or your ready-to-cook ingredients, because we don't want cross-contamination. A lot of times meat can carry bacteria that you wouldn't have had necessarily otherwise, so just make sure that you keep your raw ingredients and your other ingredients separate. So that goes for cutting boards, utensils, all of the above. All right, so the other things that we're going to put on our cheeseburger pizza, we've got the ground beef, and then I actually cut up some pickles while we were waiting. So here is the pickles. I just cut up into cubes or bits. I don't know, they're delicious. Then the next thing we're going to do is make the sauce. So for the sauce, we're going to use ketchup and mustard. I don't actually measure my ketchup and mustard. I just kind of put them in there with a higher percentage of ketchup than mustard. So if you just want to, squirt some ketchup in a bowl, you can always make more later. There's not a specific science to this. And then put some mustard in the bowl. Then mix it together. It should make this nice orange color. If you didn't know that red and yellow together made orange, now you do. that is what we are going to use as the sauce on our pizza. If you need to make more later on, just leave those off to the side so you can use those. So we are going to bake our pizza at 425 for 15 minutes. So at this point, I would go ahead and start your stove so that it can start warming up. So on this one, you click bake and then you put 425, start. If you don't know how to start yours, you can look up a user manual online, or you could just ask your parents and or guardians, whoever is in charge of cooking usually. With that, we are going to look at some of our pizza pan options. We conveniently have 2 pizza pans here, so you can see they're circular and they have the little holes in the bottom to help the crust bake evenly. A lot of times when I'm making 3 or more pizzas, we only have 2 of those, so sometimes I just use a cookie sheet or an air bake pan, so whatever you have, you can use. The one thing you have to worry about these ones is that the center of your crust gets done, just because otherwise it'll be a little extra doughy, which is still delicious. So we're not going to use this pan today, we are just going to use the pizza pans. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to take our cornmeal and you're going to sprinkle it over the top of your pan. A lot of people like to roll out the dough and then put the cornmeal on and then put the dough on top of the pan. However, I just skip a step usually and roll out the dough onto the pan because I don't have to worry about it sticking. So the cornmeal helps the crust so it doesn't get soggy on the bottom. So you're going to sprinkle that over your pan and then you are going to take half of the dough and spread it out. So we are going to do that. Alright, at this point, if I were you, I would have some extra flour on hand just in case because your hands are probably going to get stuck to the dough. So you can punch down, see how the dough deflates. For those of you who know how yeast works, yeast eats up the sugar, it's a living organism, and the CO2 bubbles that come out is what makes your dough rise. So that, if you were making rolls or something and you wanted it to be fluffy, you would let them rise and then you would bake them. I made enough dough for 2 pizzas, so I am going to be taking only half of the dough for this pizza. So I'm just putting some more flour on my hands so that doesn't stick to me. This is the part where I like to have a little bit of fun, pretend I'm a chef, throw my pizza around. Just get it nice and spread out. So you don't want to overwork the dough because you don't want to have rough pizza dough. However, we do need to get it as spread out as possible because we want it to fit onto our pan here. So now I'm going to put that down. You have 2 options at this point. You can either spread it out with your hands or you can use a rolling pin. A lot of times it works pretty well with your hands. For those of you who don't have rolling pins, here I'll grab a rolling pin quick so you can see what it looks like with a rolling pin. Alright, so that's what you're kind of looking for your end product. Nice, spread out pizza. Obviously it's not perfect on the edges, but it looks pretty good. So at this point, it is time to put on your toppings. So you're going to start with your sauce. I'm going to wash my hands quick. All right, so you are going to start with your sauce that we just made, the mix of ketchup and mustard. And you're going to spread that around. I'm just leaving like a half a inch probably around the edge just to have a little bit of a crust. If you like saucier pizzas, then you can definitely put more on. next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our ground beef that you browned, and we're going to put it on our pizza. You can also put other things like onions if you want to. I'm not going to put onions on this pizza, but you can use your imagination. You can put green peppers, that sort of stuff. You're coating of ground beef, so I'm going to put the rest of this back over here. Now, the next step is green peppers, and not green peppers, sorry. The next step is pickles. Now, some of you might be grossed out putting pickles on your pizza, but you should do it because it is so good. So, go ahead and grab your pickles, sprinkle them around. I really like pickles, so I'm going to put a bunch. What you could do is you could just do half of them, just to try it. So you could do a half and half, something like that. At this point, we are going to put on the cheese. So I usually mix some sort of cheddar, either mild or sharp, and mozzarella. Oops, mozzarella. So you can open them both up and go from there. Alright, so you're just going to spread out that cheese until it is evenly placed, and then it is ready to go into the oven. Now remember, today we did a cheeseburger pizza, but you can look in your fridge and do whatever ingredients you have in there or whatever you like on your pizza. So in our fridge I found we had some turkey and some onions and some green peppers. So our second pizza I'm going to make is actually going to be a barbecue turkey pizza because we have barbecue sauce. So I'm going to quick make that pizza before I put in this one, and then we're going to bake it. Alright everyone, we have successfully finished our pizzas and our oven just beeped. It is ready to go. Here is the pizzas all ready to go in the oven. We have your cheeseburger pizza over here, and then this is the turkey barbecue sauce pizza that I just made. So we are going to go ahead and put those in the oven. And then you're going to want to set a timer for 15 minutes. So it should take about 15 minutes. After you're done, especially if you use a pan that doesn't have holes in the bottom, you're going to want to check in the middle of your crust to make sure that it is good to go, but otherwise it should be ready to eat after that. Alright, we're still a couple minutes out, but I thought I would give you a check-in on our pizzas over here. So you can see they are starting, the cheese is melting and they're bubbling up nicely, and the cheese is starting to get a little bit brown there. That's what we're looking for. We want our cheese to be slightly brown and for it to be cooked. We still have about 8 more minutes, 7 more minutes, something like that, but I just wanted to give you that little view. Alright everyone, our 15 minutes of baking time is up, so let's take a look at our pizzas. They are looking good. You can see, especially the top one has browned cheese. I'm going to go ahead and switch them and just leave them in there a little bit longer. And then we're going to cut them and then we're going to eat them. All right, our pizza is all done cooking, so we're going to get it out of the oven. Looks like our other pizza's done too. Better get that out here. Delicious. All right, go ahead and grab your pizza cutter or a knife, whatever you have available, and cut it right up. All right. Now, which one did I cut out? This one. Then you are ready to go ahead, pop out your piece of pizza. And eat it. Go ahead and make some pizza and use whatever ingredients you have, or you can make this cheeseburger pizza if you would like. And post a photo on Instagram and tag Central City Springville FFA. We look forward to seeing you next time on Baking with Baerg.